We're told over and over in the Chumash that we're the Am Skula, the special nation, Hashem's chosen nation. Hashem loves us as children. And sometimes the question is, okay, how come I don't feel it? If Hashem loves me so much, why don't I feel that love? And I think if we'll pay attention to a story in Chumash, I think we'll see a very interesting illustration that answers this concept in a very deep way. The Psukim tell us that Balak was very much afraid that the Klal Yisrael were going to kill him. They had just won miraculously against Sichon, and he realized that he would not be able to withstand the onslaught of the Jewish people, so he sent messengers to Bilam. And Bilam was a prophet. Bilam had the ability to curse, and so Balak sent messengers to Bilam, please curse this nation. Bilam tells these messengers, I can't do anything that Hashem does not approve of. And that night, he said, wait, Hashem visits me at night, I'll answer you tomorrow morning. That night Hashem comes to visit him, and Bilam says, may I curse this nation, the nation you took out of Egypt. May I curse them, may I kill them? Hashem says, no, absolutely not. And the next morning Bilam says to the messengers of Balak, no deal. Hashem said no. So in fact the messengers go back, and Balak sends another group, more esteemed, more noble, and again the same scene plays out. Will you curse this nation? Bilam says, I can't do anything that Hashem doesn't allow me to. That night Hashem again comes to visit him, and again Bilam asks, may I curse this nation? And Hashem says, yes. If it's for your benefit, if you're going to make money on the deal, you can, but under one condition, you only say exactly what I tell you to say. The next day, Bilam gets up, hitches up his donkey himself, and sets off to curse the Jewish nation. Vayichar af Hashem. Hashem was furious. Bilam understood that Hashem obviously didn't want him cursing the Jewish nation, and nevertheless he went on the way. And then we have the entire event with Bilam's donkey. At a certain point, a malach appears along the way, and Bilam doesn't see the malach, but the donkey does. And the donkey is filled with dread, with fear, runs off the road to the side. Bilam hits the donkey back onto the road, and the donkey continues on his way. They get to a place where there are two walls, and at a certain point the malach appears, and the donkey moves to the side, squishing Bilam's leg against the wall. Bilam again beats the donkey. They continue along the way, and finally the malach stands right in front of the donkey, and the donkey sits down and won't move. Bilam beats the donkey, beats the donkey, beats the donkey, and finally, Vayiftach Hashem es pia osan. Hashem opened up the mouth of the donkey, and the donkey said to Bilam, why have you hit me these 3 times? Why are you doing this? Bilam says, what? If I had a sword, I'd kill you. And a back and forth ensues. Finally, the malach appears to Bilam and says to Bilam, it's you who should have been killed. And Bilam realizes he's in trouble. He then continues on his way, despite the warning, continues, and he meets up with Balak and he says, I can only curse them if I'm allowed to. Let's build 7 separate mizbeachs, 7 separate altars. On each altar he sacrifices 7 animals, and each time he does it, he attempts to curse the Jewish nation, and each time, instead of cursing, out of his mouth comes brachas. And finally Balak says to him, I hired you to curse, and you give them brachas, what good are you? So Bilam says, okay, you're right. I didn't succeed in cursing, but let me explain to you. Their God hates iniquity. If you'd like to defeat them, what you should do is have the Benos Moab, the daughters of Moab, let them seduce the Jewish men, and then you'll win against them. That's in fact what happened. Balak convinced the elders to tell the women to be promiscuous, and they seduced the Jewish men. 24,000 men died, and there was a magefa, almost a civil war. Pinchas realized what happened because Zimri, one of the heads of the Shevet, brought one of these women into the encampment. Pinchas stands up, takes the romach, takes the spear, and kills the 2 of them, and the magefa stopped, but 24,000 Jewish men died in that plague. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that Bilam is a Rasha. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos 4 times in one Mishnah calls him Bilam HaRasha. But in fact, if you'd like to know what a Rasha he was, let's focus on a point that Rashi makes. Why in the world would Hashem give nevuah, prophecy, to a guy Rasha, to a wicked Gentile? The Rambam explains to us prophecy is something that a person works very hard on for years and years, maybe decades, perfects himself, grows, accomplishes. He then studies by an actual Navi. And if he reaches an incredibly high level of spirituality, he merits Hashem speaking directly to him. But that wasn't Bilam. And Rashi says there's only one reason why Hashem appeared to Bilam. the Ummah Olam, the nations, would have a complaint. Of course the Jewish people became great because you sent them prophets. They showed them the right way. Had you sent us prophets, we too would have gone the right way. So Hashem says, let's see if that's true. Hashem sends them prophets, and instead of Bilam leading them correctly, he leads them to iniquity, he leads them to the Benos Moab, seducing the Jewish men, and in fact he brought them to a much lower level than they had been at first. But the point is, there was nothing about Bilam that merited prophecy, nothing about him as an individual that he did. He was a wicked individual. If you'd like to appreciate how wicked he was, let's focus on the first conversation he has with Hashem. He says to Hashem, you know your chosen nation, the one that you took out of Mitzrayim, the one you love, may I kill them? But he asked permission to kill them, man, woman, and child. Balak sent the messengers with only one request. Curse the Jewish nation so that I could win against them in battle, and I'll kick them out of my land. That wasn't what Bilam asked for. He asked for much more. Let me curse them to annihilate them, the entire nation, man, woman, and child, make them dead. But it wasn't just that he wanted to make them dead. And Rashi makes an interesting observation. Bilam was a very wealthy man, a very prestigious individual, and yet the Pasuk tells us that when he sets out to curse the Jewish nation, he saddles his donkey himself. Why did he do that? Says Rashi, Sina mekalkelis is a shurab. Hatred blinds a person. He did something inappropriate. He hitched up the donkey himself. Why? Because it's so filled with hatred, and he wanted to curse them with such energy that he did something that's inappropriate. Let's go! He couldn't wait for his saddle boy to saddle up the donkey. He did it himself because Sina mekalkelis is a shura. That's how much he hated the Jewish nation. Now, with that as an observation, clearly we're dealing with a wicked individual, clearly not someone meritorious, and surely not someone that Hashem would care for in any real sense. Yet Rashi tells us this malach that appeared in front of the donkey was a malach rachamim. How does Rashi know that? Because look what the malach did. The malach didn't really try to stop Bilam. The malach tried to prevent him, says Rashi, from sinning so he shouldn't be lost. Because the malach tried 3 times to get Bilam to realize, finally speaking to Bilam, the malach was a malach of mercy that Hashem sent because maybe Bilam will do tshuva so that he won't be lost. And that should be rather perplexing. Why should Hashem care? There's a guy Russia who turned so wicked that he wants to destroy the Jewish nation. Hashem wants to bring him back in tshuva? But even worse than that, the Seforno on the Pasuk, Vayiftach Hashem es pi'ason, Hashem opened up the mouth of the donkey. Seforno says, why did Hashem bring such a miracle? An animal speaking is a miracle equivalent to Dam Svardei Akinim, to the Makkahs we saw in Mitzrayim. Says the Seforno, there was one reason. Because maybe Bilam would learn the lesson. A donkey that can't speak, Hashem can give it the ability to speak, so clearly Hashem can take that away as well. And by recognizing that, Bilam would recognize Hashem's dominion, and he would do tshuva, that way he wouldn't be lost. Now that Seforno is rather perplexing. Why in the world would Hashem bring a miracle, an overt, obvious miracle, for a wicked Gentile who's turning to kill the Jewish nation? We're dealing with Ahmadinejad, we're dealing with a Sinwar, we're dealing with a Hitler, we're dealing with a man who wants to make the entire nation dead. Why would Hashem have mercy, send a malach of mercy, bring a miracle to try to, we don't want to lose him? This Rashi sounds very difficult to understand, and the Surah sounds even more difficult to understand. And to answer this question, I'd like to focus on something that we typically make a mistake about. I believe maybe the biggest theological mistake that many, many people make is they misread a pasuk in Chumash. The pasuk says, "Vayivra Elokim es Adam b'tzalmo." Hashem created man in God's image. Unfortunately, people seem to misread that, and what they do is they create God in man's image. You see, instead of understanding that God is infinite, beyond all human characteristics, beyond all human attributes, they take human attributes, human limitations, and apply it to God. And they create an image of Hashem, okay, a little bit smarter than the average person, a little bit better than the average person, but still within the context of a human being. And when you take human limitations, human flaws, human frailties, and apply it to Hashem, you create such a skewed version of our Creator that you end up with rather perplexing versions of what Hashem wants from us, what life is about, and ultimately Hashem's relationship with us. And to sort of debunk this myth, let's begin with one observation. What is Hashem's IQ? Right? I think it's a fair question, right? What is Hashem's intelligent quotient? How smart is Hashem? Now, imagine you have a very smart man has 150 IQ. A genius has 180 IQ. Now, clearly Hashem is wiser than all of them. Hashem created everything from nothing. So does Hashem have a 300 IQ, 3,000 IQ, 30,000 IQ? What is Hashem's IQ? And the answer is the question is foolish. Any measure has a start point and a finish. Any measure is a scale that has a beginning and has an end. Any measure does not apply to Hashem. Hashem is limitless, boundless, beyond all human understanding, certainly beyond any human limitation. If you'd like to understand the wisdom of Hashem and the knowledge of Hashem, everything in creation Hashem brought forth and is maintained by Hashem every moment in existence. But Hashem is everywhere at the same time. Everyone thinks in the platform of God. If you imagine a supercomputer, and we're just thinking, we're plugging into the platform of Hashem, because everything that exists within Hashem's world that Hashem keeps in existence. And if you'd like an illustration of the intelligence of Hashem, let me make it very clear. Imagine I give you a challenge. I want you to take two discrete thoughts and think them at the same time. Think two separate thoughts, think them out at the same time. Now, if you have ADD, you'll note that that's pretty difficult to do. And because we human beings are poor at concentrating on one concept, surely not two at the same time. But here's the observation. What is davening? Tefillah is a conversation between me and Hashem. I'm speaking to Hashem. Hashem listens. Hashem understands where I'm at. And maybe He will grant that tefillah, maybe He won't. He takes into account many, many different things. Where I'm coming from, where I'm at, how this thing that I'm requesting will affect myself, others, etc. And Hashem either will grant it or won't grant it. But oftentimes when I'm davening next to another person. And if I'm davening in a large enough minyan, there might be 200 people. That means as I'm speaking to Hashem and Hashem is listening, the person next to me is speaking to Hashem and Hashem is listening. But as I have my request, He has His request. And as I have many intricate balances, many people that if this request is granted will be affected, so too does He. But He and I are not the only people in the room. There are 200 people in the room. And Hashem listens to 200 conversations at the same time, weighing, measuring, calibrating whether He should grant it or shouldn't grant it, where is each person at, and what this will affect in terms of others. But here's the observation. It's not 200 people at the same time. If it's a Rosh Hashanah morning, Yom Kippur morning, and there's a shul in every city, but if you live in Monsey, New York, there are probably 450 shuls. But Monsey is not the only city in the world. There's New York, there's Brooklyn, there's Queens, there's Yerushalayim, there's Tel Aviv. There's cities throughout the world. You're talking about millions of people all speaking to Hashem at the same moment, Hashem thinking it through, hearing it, weighing it, measuring, and deciding. But really, it's much deeper than that. On this globe, occupied by some 7.8 billion people, Hashem is the creator, maintainer, and orchestrator of all. Granted, Hashem intercedes in a greater extent to the Jewish nation than He does with the Gentiles, but everything's interwoven, everything's intertwined, and that means Hashem is conscious, present in 7.8 billion people's lives at the same moment, at the same time, here in Tokyo, Singapore, and Canada, wherever it may be, Hashem is there. And if you realize that, what you quickly realize is Hashem is not a little bit smarter than us. Hashem is not a lot smarter than us. And it's beyond human capacity to even understand, relate to in any way the wisdom of our Creator. And if you study any feature in this creation, study a human eye, study a cell, study the blood system, circulatory system, you'll see the incredible capacity, wisdom of our Creator. But the problem is we fail to do that. And many times a person will have questions on Hashem. Hashem, why me? Why are you doing this? You do. And somehow that person never thinks to realize maybe Hashem has a better understanding of what I need than I do. And I think this is the first fallacy that people make, the first manifestation of creating Hashem in man's images. They take a human being and kind of extend it a little bit. That's Hashem's wisdom. If a human being is so smart, Hashem may be even smarter, but you so limit Hashem because you're taking human attributes and attributing it to your Creator. Hashem is limitless, boundless, beyond any wisdom of a human being. But I think this fallacy of making God in man's image carries another element that might be even worse and might be even more prevalent. I'll share with you what that is. I was once speaking to an out-of-town community, and I mentioned there are 4 levels of Emunah, and I spent some time on the 3rd level. The 3rd level of Emunah is knowing that Hashem knows my thoughts as I'm thinking them. Hashem knows exactly what I'm thinking as I'm thinking them. I'm like that lucite man in the laboratory. You know, you see in the science lab, you'll see the man made of lucite, and inside you can see the pancreas, the liver, the stomach, the heart. That's me when I daven Shemona Esrei. Hashem peers into the essence of me, understands where I'm coming from, understands where I'm going, and reads my thoughts, hears my thoughts as I'm thinking them. As a matter of fact, the pasuk we say at the end of every Shemona Esrei, Yiyu lerotzon imrei fi, let the words of my mouth find favor in your eyes, vehegyon libi, and the thoughts of my heart, lefanecha, in front of you. I don't have to speak out my words for God to hear them. I speak them out for me, to create the koach hatzila, the power of davening, but Hashem hears my thoughts as I'm thinking them. Hashem knows my thoughts exactly as if I spoke them out. And that's the 3rd level of Emunah. I spent some time in it, then I went on to the 4th, and then I finished, I concluded, and people came over afterwards with questions, etc. And I noticed one woman was troubled, really, really troubled. And she came over to me after and said, this is terrible. Hashem knows my thoughts. Hashem knows what I'm thinking as I'm thinking. This is terrible. And she was very agitated, and I didn't know what to make of it. Certainly didn't know how to answer her. And then her husband explained. She was a balas tshuva, and she had grown up with an abusive father. And the idea that someone is actually like in her world, knows her thoughts is so invasive that it troubled her greatly. So I said to her, Madam, I hear the difficulty, but I believe I could solve this problem. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and when we answer these 3 questions, I believe this concept will not trouble you anywhere near as much as it does now. Let me begin. I said question number 1 is, what did you do to make it worthy for Hashem to create you? Right? What did you do that made it worthy to create you? Meaning, before you were created, what great deed did you do that Hashem said, oh, this person is so great, I'm going to create them? The answer is nothing, because before you existed, you didn't exist. And that's exactly the point. There's nothing that you did to make it worthy for Hashem to create you. Hashem created you for one reason and one reason only, because Hashem's the meitiv, the giver. Hashem wants to benefit others. Hashem wants to give. And when you understand that concept, you understand our relation to Hashem. Hashem did not create us because we're deserving, and Hashem doesn't need anything from us. Hashem only wants one thing and one thing only, our benefit, our good. Hashem wants to share of His good with others. And when I understand that there's nothing that Hashem lacks, nothing that I could ever do for Hashem, I could spend my entire lifetime, I can't give Hashem anything because Hashem lacks nothing. I begin then to understand my relationship with my Creator. There's one single thread that runs throughout that relationship. Hatava, goodness, giving, kindliness. There's only one reason why Hashem created me, put me on this planet and keeps me here, because Hashem wants to share of His good with me. But that's the sole reason, nothing in it for God, and nothing to gain, just the desire to give, to be a benefactor, to be a meitiv to others. I said that was question number 1. What did you do to make it worthy for Hashem to create you? Question number 2 is a little bit more troubling. Question number 2 is, what can you do to make Hashem angry? Right? Let's imagine you say, that's it, God, I'm going to get back at you. And you decide you're really going to do something to make God angry with you. What could you do to make Hashem angry with you? I said, Madam, I'd like to share with you the answer. The answer is nothing. There's nothing you could do that could ever make Hashem angry. Why? People on the same level can anger one another. If I do something bad to you and you're frustrated or angry, and really anger typically is a lack of control, there's nothing that Hashem doesn't control. But even more than that, if you understand that planet Earth is amongst 100 billion stars as bright as our sun or more in a local Milky Way galaxy. Our Milky Way galaxy is one of 100 billion galaxies amongst the 13 billion light years of ever-expanding space, and all of it is occupied by Hashem. Hashem is called the Makom, the place, because Hashem is everywhere. If there's anything that exists, it only exists because Hashem keeps it in existence. And that means that Hashem occupies every single particle of physicality throughout the 13 billion light years of ever-expanding space. So imagine that I decide to get Hashem angry. Hashem searches, oh, let me find it. Oh, there's the galaxy Milky Way. Oh, yeah, I see it. Oh, and there's, and the planet Earth. Oh, yeah, there's planet Earth. And there's 7.8 billion people. Oh, there's Schaefer. Oh, we're not on the same level with Hashem to get Hashem angry. We're not combatants. It's imagine that you have an infant child, 6 days old, and the child scratches. Oh, I'm angry with you, you bad infant. You can't get angry with an infant. There's not on the same level, not in the same world. Does Hashem care about us? Absolutely, for one reason. Because Hashem's a meitiv, Hashem's the giver. But Hashem can't get angry with us. Number one, it's so absurd. It puts importance to human being well beyond anything human being will ever have, but more than that. Anger is a limitation. Anger is a limit that a human being reaches, and then he steps over that line. There are no limits to Hashem. Hashem doesn't get angry. Hashem doesn't get jealous. And Hashem doesn't wreak vengeance. When the Chumash describes that Hashem acts with anger, it's what the Bali Musar explained. Hashem wears midos. A little bit what we call kas panim. Sometimes you have a little child, you have to act angry. You want to hold back the laughter because the child's so cute, but you have to act angry for the good of the child. Hashem acts with midos. Hashem acts with anger, punishes us, but not to wreak vengeance, not to get back, for one reason and one reason only, for our benefit, for our good. And any punishment in the Torah is a kapara, is an atonement, good for the person receiving it, done with loving kindness. Much like a person might take his child to the doctor, and the doctor may have to do an operation. An operation may cause a child a lot of pain, but certainly the father doesn't hate the child, the opposite. It's out of love for the child, concern for the child, that the father expends money and all efforts to help the child. That's our relationship to Hashem. There's nothing you could do to get Hashem angry. But I said question number 3 is another interesting question. Question number 3 is, how much patience does Hashem have? Right? Some people have a lot of patience, and some people have little patience. I was a high school Rebbe for 15 years, high school boys. That job requires an awful lot of patience. How much patience does Hashem have? And the answer again is, the scale of measure does not apply to our Creator. It's a human limitation, a human frailty. You can push my buttons just so far, push me, and then I lose patience and I flip. I go into my anger mode or whatever it may be, but that doesn't apply to Hashem. Hashem may act with these midos, and that Hashem doesn't lose patience. And once you understand these 3 points, you'll understand our relationship with our Creator much differently than most people do. And number 1, there's nothing in it for Hashem. Hashem only wants our good. He created us for one reason, not because we're great or good or bad or indifferent. Hashem created us just to give. And all that Hashem wants in this whole world is to be a meitiv, to be a giver. Hashem doesn't get angry. Hashem will act that way sometimes because it's for our benefit, but there's no such concept of Hashem really being angry. And number 3, Hashem doesn't lose patience. It's not like, oh, after what you've done, after what you've gone through, I can't forgive you. Those concepts don't apply to Hashem. I said to this woman, when you understand this, you'll be a lot more comfortable with Hashem being present in your life. And my friends, I believe that is exactly the answer to Bilam. A guy, Russia, wicked Gentile, who turns to destroy the Jewish nation. He didn't do it yet. And Hashem says, maybe I could save him. He shouldn't be lost. Hashem sends a malach rachamim. Try to convince him, try to stop him. Find that the malach doesn't succeed. But yiftach Hashem es pia oson. Hashem opens up the mouth of the donkey. Why? Because maybe we could save this Bilam. Bilam, you want him dead. He's Sinwar. He's Hitler. Answer is, he didn't do that yet. He's not there. Maybe we could stop him. Maybe he could do tshuva. And I believe this Surno and Rashi are incredibly powerful insights into our relationship with our Creator. Because even a guy, a wicked Gentile, Hashem wants one thing, to help, to do benefit, and not to have to punish, certainly not to have to destroy completely and totally, which is what the end of Bilam is. 4 Hedjotos, 4 people have no chelik in the world to come. One of them is Bilam. But the point is, I'm not a guy, and I'm not a Russia. Okay, I'm sure there are many things I do that I shouldn't do. I'm sure there are many things I could do, and okay, you're right, that's true. But I promise you, in my entire life, I never once dreamt about killing an entire nation. I don't even think I dreamt about killing a person. And I certainly didn't do what Bilam does. And yet Hashem waited for Bilam's tshuva. Hashem did various things to allow Bilam to do tshuva. And how much more so we, Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the Jewish people, Hashem's chosen nation, Hashem's beloved. Okay, I'm not living up to what I should be. I'm not the great tzaddik maybe I could have been. But at the end of the day, I'm a Jewish person who's trying sincerely, and I can turn to my Creator and say, Hashem, please help. How could I turn to Hashem after what I've done, after what I've seen? The answer is Hashem doesn't lose patience. Hashem doesn't get angry. And more than anything, there's only one thing Hashem wants, for us to grow, to accomplish, to change, so that for eternity we can enjoy the good. And I believe this has a number of applications that are very, very important. One, simply understanding our relationship with our Creator. But secondly, in understanding something that I think that troubles a lot of people. Here's a simple observation. I guarantee you are not living up to 85% of your capacity. I guarantee it. How do I guarantee it? Because the only people who got above that were people on the caliber, the ilk of Moshe Rabbeinu, Aaron HaKohen, Shmuel HaNavi. But the vast majority of people don't come anywhere near living up to their capacity. So that means I'm a failure, I'm a loser? The answer is if we understood the greatness of a human being, who understood how much Hashem gives us the capacity to accomplish, we'd realize that if we're hitting 65%, that's mighty impressive and mighty good. Are there people who did greater? Yeah, there were such people. There was Shmuel HaNavi, there was Moshe Rabbeinu, there was Aaron HaKohen, but we're not them. And halavai, if we're at 65% of our capacity, we're doing very, very well. And you may say to me, so how can I live with myself? 65% of my capacity, I'm a loser, maybe even 50%. I'm a worthless bum, I'm a creep. And more than that, what's my olam haba going to look like? If I'm only at 50% of my capacity, that means 50% is left over. My goodness, what's my world to come? I'm an absolute worthless creep. And I'd like to share with you a mushal to help clarify things a little bit. Imagine that you have a successful business and you work hard at it and build it and build it and build it for 20 years. And it grows and grows and grows, and finally you get the offer. A multinational conglomerate wants to buy out your business for $250 million. Whoa! You gladly sit down to the table, and you bring your lawyers, you sign, and you get the deposit in your bank for $250 million, and you start living the life you've always dreamt of. Very nice. Within 2 years, you realize that had you waited another 2 years, you wouldn't have got $250 million. You could have gotten $400 million for your business. $150 million I blew. I'm such a loser. It's true. But most of us somehow could eke it by with $250 million. It's true I could have had more. It's true $150 million is a lot of money, but $250 million ain't too bad. And that's the understanding that I have to get comfortable with. It is true I'm not living up to my capacity. Maybe I'm at 60%, 65% halavai, hopefully it should be. I'm leaving over a lot. Okay, I'm going to try more, I'm going to work more. But I also have to get comfortable with that simple reality that I'm going to leave a lot on the table, but it's okay. As long as I'm really growing, I'm really learning, I'm davening, I'm working my midos, I'm really doing chesed, I'm really doing what I should be doing in this life, it's okay because I'm racking it up. Maybe not 400 million, but 250 million ain't bad. And that understanding helps me relate to my Creator in a much greater way. Because you see, oftentimes we may feel so inadequate. So, how could I approach Hashem? I'm living up to 50% of my, I'm living half what I could be doing. I could be somebody else, I could be somebody great. I can know Shas. I could be a Baal Chesed of incredible proportions. I could have fabulous, and I don't. How could I even daven to Hashem? How could Hashem ever forgive me for what I've done with this opportunity called life? And that's when I have to stop and say, wait a minute. Let me stop putting human traits on God. Let me stop limiting Hashem to the way human beings feel, the way human beings think. All Hashem wants is our good. All Hashem wants is our growth. And all Hashem wants is for us to reach out and ask for help, ask for more and more and more help, because ultimately that's what helps us grow more than anything, and ultimately that's what Hashem wants. And again, I believe these concepts are very important because we often don't think about them, and we often don't realize to what extent they happen, and they often stop us from really reaching our potential. But I think there's a whole other area that these concepts apply to. The Chovos HaLevavos explains to us the essence of bitachon are two fundamental concepts. The first is pretty easy to attain. The second is very, very difficult. The first concept that a Jew has to have clearly embedded in their essence is the understanding that Hashem loves me more than I love me. As much as I want my betterment, as much as I want everything good for me, as much as I'm concerned for my good, as much as I love me, Hashem loves me even more. And that concept, while it may be lofty, is not that difficult to really attain. I'll give you a simple exercise. Watch the mother of a newborn baby with that child. The mother will go sleepless nights for the child. The mother does anything for the child. Likely the mother would give her life for the child. Now here's the question. What great deed did the baby do that the mother says, oh great baby, after what you've done for me, I'll give up my life? The answer is nothing. So why does the mother feel that way? The answer is because Hashem implanted a maternal instinct into the mother, a giving nature, a desire to give, a love, concern for the baby. But that was implanted in her by our Creator. The Chovos HaLevavos says any love that you experience comes from Hashem. And you have to realize that if you take that unbridled love, as much as a mother could love a child, and multiply it by 10,000, 10,000, 10,000 times, it doesn't equal a splinter of the unlimited love that Hashem has for any one of His creations. Not Moshe Rabbeinu, not Aaron Cohen, any one of His creations, a wicked Gentile even, proved being Bilam HaRasha. The point is, we take human limitations and we assume Hashem can't really love me, Hashem can't really be concerned for me, because look, human beings don't really care that much about me. How much other people really care about me? And obviously, all right, Hashem's a little bit more compassionate, but you can't assume Hashem's like limitless love. And again, we apply human limits to Hashem, and we falsify. We create a false deity. We create, I don't want to say an avodah zarah. We create an image of Hashem that's completely, utterly false, that has no connection to Hashem. Because any human limit that we place on Hashem is exactly that, false. It's not applicable and doesn't apply, and nothing that I do gets Hashem angry. Hashem doesn't lose patience with me. Hashem doesn't say, I'm fed up. And He's living up to 25% of His capacity, throw Him out. Human beings have those flaws. Human beings have those limits. But that's not the Creator of the heavens and the earth. And if we stop applying human fallacies, human flaws to God, we'll have a much better understanding of Hashem, a much better understanding of our relationship with Hashem, and how much we can rely on Hashem. And that's the first concept that a person has to trust Hashem, to be bitachon, that Hashem loves me more than I love me. But it's a second concept that the Chovos HaLevavos explains to us that I believe gives us a lot more trouble. The second concept is, as much as I want my good, Hashem wants it even more. That is not so hard to understand. But the second concept is that Hashem knows better than I what's for my best. The second concept is, as much as I know what's good for me, Hashem knows even better. As much as I clearly see this is what I need, Hashem has a much clearer version. And as much as I think this is the best thing in the world for me, Hashem may have an understanding vastly different than my own. As much as I understand what's for my best, Hashem knows even better than I what's for my best. And this concept gives us trouble all the time, because I've said this before, but it bears repeating. The problem is we play God. Playing God means I know what I need. I need to marry this woman. I need to get this job. I need to get my kid into this class. And I try, and it doesn't go. Hashem, what's the deal? I broker a deal with Hashem. I'll learn Daf Yomi. I give more tzedakah. Hashem, I'll work on my midas. Hashem, what? I don't get it. Hashem, I need this. It's so important. Hashem, what's the deal? You're angry with me. I have time. Hashem, why are you doing this to me? Where are you? And the thought that maybe this which I think is so good for me isn't good for me at all never seems to cross my conscious mind. How many times do you hear a guy have to marry that woman and he doesn't marry that woman? She marries somebody else. And 5 years later he hears the word mentally unstable is an understatement to describe her condition. I have to get that job. He doesn't get that job. 3 years later he finds out the entire industry is shipped over to India. I have to get my kid into that class. And he tries and it doesn't go. And 6 months later he finds out there's another child in that class who would have been the worst possible influence on his child. Understanding that Hashem knows better than I what's for my best is understanding my relationship with Hashem. Hashem is the master and I am the servant. Hashem is the creator and I am the creation. Many times what we do is we have our version of what's supposed to be and we expect Hashem to play along. Hashem, I've written the plot. I know it's supposed to go. Please follow along. As if I'm the creator and Hashem is the creation. I'm the master and Hashem's the servant to follow my bidding. The only problem with that is it's completely backwards. I really don't know. How many times do we hotly pursue something and it turns out to be bad for us? How many times do we try to run away from something, somehow it happens anyway, and it turns out to be the best thing in the world for us? Understanding that as much as I know what's best for me, Hashem knows even better, allows me to be noheg, to act in this world as an intelligent, functional person. My job is to do my shtadlus. I'm supposed to use my mind. I'm supposed to use energy and vigor. I'm supposed to pursue the derech hatev, the ways of the earth, the ways of the world. But once I've done that and the door shut and it shuts and it shuts again, I'm supposed to say, okay, I get it. Hashem, you don't want this to happen. Maybe because that which I think is so good for me isn't for my best. And that's what I'm supposed to understand. As much as I know what's good for me, Hashem knows even better. But you see, these two concepts, that Hashem loves me more than I love me, and Hashem knows better than I what's for my best, is the underpinnings of all of our bitachon, all of our trust in Hashem. Once I firmly have this inside me, of course I don't balk. Of course I don't get upset. Of course, Hashem, I get it. You know better than I. You love me more than I love me. You know better than I what's for my best. You're bringing me along the path, and I fully trust with equanimity, with joy in my heart. I follow the path. And again, if I stop putting human limitations on God, stop taking human attributes and attributing it to Hashem, it's a lot easier to do that. But I think there's one more step that we need to focus on. One more step to fully understand why is it that we don't feel the love of Hashem, we don't feel that showering of bracha, we don't have joy in our heart of Hashem deeply, deeply being concerned for one thing, our benefit. And to understand this, I'll share with you an interesting conversation I had. Our Sameach is a 12-minute walk from my home, and when it was operating, we had many Bachrim who would come over, many fellows would go through Yeshiva, we'd have them over for Shabbos guests. I had many interesting conversations at the Shabbos table. One young fellow who was on the way to becoming a Baal Tshuva, wasn't there yet, at the Shabbos table, he said, Rabbi, I've asked everyone I know this question. I asked my professors, I asked my uncles, I asked any intelligent man I could find, I asked him this question, and I cannot find an answer to this question. Rabbi, maybe you can answer this question. I said, well, I don't know. Let me hear what the question is. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. I don't know. He said, the question is, why have kids? Why have kids? Not why have kids because I want to enjoy this world, I want to party, why should I waste my time and resources on kids? Why have kids when the world is so filled with pain and ugliness? Why do that to an innocent soul? Why take an innocent baby and bring them into such an ugly, pain-filled world? Why do it? Because I want a kid? Because I want for selfish motives, I should have a child? Why should I do that to the child? And I said, young man, that's an interesting question. And I have two answers to the question. The wrong answer and the right answer. Which would you prefer? Well, he's Jewish, so he said, I'll take both. I said, okay, fine. I'll tell you both. Let me tell you the wrong answer first. The wrong answer is you're right. Life is really ugly. It's tough. It's rough. But if you knew what the world to come is worth, you know how great it is to be close to Hashem there, it's worth suffering an entire lifetime of deprivation, of pain. It's so worth it because if you saw the end game, you'd see it's well worth it. I said to him, that's 100% true, but that's the wrong answer to this question. The correct answer to the question is, if you live a life of meaning and purpose, life is beautiful. If you understand why you're here, life is filled with happiness, joy, and inner satisfaction. Are there rough moments? There sure are. Are there pains? Yeah, there are. There's stomachache and toothaches and there's heartache and there's all kinds of troubles, but life itself is beautiful. But you see, what's lacking in this generation is an understanding of why we're here. If you live a pointless, meaningless life, whether it be that to gain as much money as you can, or honor, or wealth, or pleasure, whatever it may be, you're living a life that's not in sync with you. Hashem created you for a purpose, to grow and accomplish. When you live your life for that purpose, there's an inner harmony and inner joy. The world sings out with joy. You wake up in the morning and say, wow, let's go. Does it mean every moment of life is pleasure? No. There will be hardships and pains, but there's an inner satisfaction, inner joy. But when you don't know why you're here, when you're living life in a meaningless, purposeless way, ugh, why do it? It's so ugly. There's so much pain. But more than that, there's no meaning to life. There's no purpose. And you say things like, why bring kids into the world? But once you understand why you were here and you live your life that way, there's an inner joy. You see the beauty of this world. Yes, it's true that we're living here for the world to come. That's why Hashem created us. And it's worth it even going through a life of deprivation and pain. But that's not the world we live in. The world we live in has some pain, but it's beautiful, it's joy-filled. But that's based on one thing, you're understanding why you're living, understanding why you're here. And if people say, Hashem doesn't love me, I don't feel Hashem's love, the first question I ask is, how much aligned with your life purpose are you? How much are you living a life the way your Creator wanted you to do? Are you living with mission? Are you living with purpose? Are you living to serve your Creator? Are you really growing? Are you really accomplishing? Because I've yet to meet a person who's really growing and accomplishing who doesn't have that inner joy. And I'll tell you something even more interesting. If you watch any of the Chayalim in Rafah now, watch any of the Chayalim in Gaza, they're fighting for their lives. It's an existential battle for Israel. And these soldiers understand the danger. They have many friends who are killed or injured, and they recognize the danger. Yet you see the joy. It's incredible when you talk to them, when you see, the joy that they experience is incredible. Why? Because they're living for a purpose. Their mission is to save the Jewish nation. And when you live with a purpose, there's a joy, there's an inner satisfaction, there's an inner happiness. Okay, we're not all on the front line. That's not our job, but our job is to live exactly the way our Creator wants us to, with mission, with purpose, with drive, with an understanding. And when you do that, there's an inner joy. Does Hashem love us to a boundless, limitless sense? Absolutely. Listen to what Rashi says, that Hashem looked at Bilam and said, yes, he wanted to curse my beloved nation. Yes, he wanted to kill man, woman, and child. He hasn't done it yet. Maybe he could still do tshuva. Let me send a Malach Rachim, a Goy Russia. He was given a gift of Nevuah, and he uses it for the... Doesn't matter. He hasn't done it yet. Maybe I could bring him back. And not only that, he doesn't listen to the Malach Rachim. Surely now Hashem should lose patience. But Yiftach Hashem Mapiyah, also Hashem opens the mouth of the donkey. Maybe we can get him to do tshuva. He hasn't stepped over that red line yet. He hasn't really engaged in cursing. Maybe we could stop him. And Hashem brings a miracle of that proportions. How much more so for us, the Jewish nation. And we try to serve Hashem. We're not Rishoyim. Again, I'm not a great tzaddik, but I'm certainly not a Russia. And I certainly don't try to kill dozens or millions of people. That's not my life. But even more than that, I'm a Ben Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov. How much more Hashem waits for my tefillah? How much Hashem wants my tefillah? And why is it that I don't feel the love of Hashem? So for a number of reasons. The first reason is because we take human limits and apply it to God. We create man, we have an image of man, and we create God in that image. The problem is we got it backwards. When you understand the wisdom of our Creator, Hashem's IQ is not limited. There's no number. L'tfunoso ein mispar. There's no number to Hashem's wisdom and understanding. Because Hashem's wisdom, understanding, knowledge is limitless. And it means in plain, simple language, Hashem isn't a little bit smarter than me, not even a lot smarter than me, not even, wow, much, much smarter than me. There's no scale of comparison between human understanding and God's understanding. And once I get that, I can then take the next step. I can recognize that Hashem isn't limited to any human flaw. Hashem doesn't get angry. Hashem doesn't lose patience. And more than anything, Hashem doesn't need or want anything. And finally he says, I've had enough. I wanted and wanted and wanted, needed for you, and you didn't do it for me, I'm angry with you. Hashem created us for one reason, to give to us. Hashem needs nothing. All Hashem wants is our benefit, for us to grow and accomplish. Hashem waits and waits and waits. And Hashem will wait even for a Bilam or Russia until the last moment. How much more so us? If we don't experience the love, we don't feel it. The first problem is likely we take the image of man and place it on God. We have to stop doing that. And the next part, we have to live life with purpose, with meaning. You have to grow, you have to accomplish, you have to be learning, you have to be dominating, you have to work on Amunah, you have to work on your midos. And when you live that kind of life, there's an inner joy, there's a happiness. And I want to close with one last observation. We laugh at Bilam Harasha. His donkey stops, and he doesn't get the message. His donkey squishes his leg against the wall, doesn't get the message. His donkey sits down, and Bilam beats the donkey. Finally, v'yiftach Hashem es pi asam, Hashem opens the donkey's mouth, and the donkey says, Bilam, why have you done this to me 3 times? Hit me. Why did I do it to you? If I had a sword, I'd stab you. Oh, Bilam, stop. Bilam, it's your donkey. Your donkey is talking to you. Maybe something's going on here. We laugh. He's comical. He has a conversation, a debate with the donkey, until the Malach appears and says, it was me who was doing it. Oh, he sounds like a clown. And while it is comical, I'd like to share with you, I think many times we do just about the same. Hashem sends signs. Hashem sends messengers. Hashem sends various shluchim to allow us to come back, to change our ways, to grow, to accomplish, and we don't pay attention. We get angry at Hashem. Hashem, why'd you do this to me? I broke my leg, and this failed, and this failed. Hashem, why? Why are you doing this to me? We get angry, and we're a little bit like Bilam. Instead of getting the message, instead of listening to our loving God who wants nothing but our benefit, we get angry with God, and we turn against Him. And like Bilam, we start beating the donkey. We start arguing with our situation in life. And the understanding that Hashem only wants our benefit. And many times Hashem will send signs, messages, various ways of getting us back on the path. Is something the person has to be attuned to. You have to open your ears, open your eyes, understand the unlimited love Hashem has for us, and look for Hashem guiding you. When you do that, you live a life of purpose. There's an inner joy in your heart. There's happiness. You accomplish your mission in this world, and you gain the world to come.